So, here we are again, talking about the most recent episode of My Hero Academia in Season 7. And let's just say that while this is not the most action-packed episode, or the episode with the most action and the most animation, it is still a very fantastic episode with probably some of the emotional highs that we're going to be seeing in the season so far, and we'll be getting more into it right now. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Andrew, and I'm here to do my review and breakdown for My Hero Academia Season 7, Episode 4, the story of how we all became heroes. And for the most part, when it comes to this anime adaptation of the manga, it is going to be very much diving into 3 chapters post the reveal of who the UA trader is, and really just telling the story of how these students and how everyone is going to become the greatest hero. And I think that this episode pretty much amplifies this ideal to its max, especially from beginning and most importantly at the end. So let's just break down this episode and give you all of the stuff that I saw and that you may have missed when watching the episode. And for starters, to start off, the episode is based off the manga from manga chapters 338 all the way up to 340. And all of these chapters have the same name as the title of this episode, the story of how we all became heroes, separated into parts 1, 2, and 3. And the episode itself starts off once again with another flashback or recap of what we saw last episode that actually leads into this episode post the actual opening. And pretty much from here, as well as with the rest of this episode, it relatively adapts what we get in the manga point for point, but obviously changes some of the dialogue choices in this moment. In this moment in particular, there is also a change where we have all of the students conveying their ideas of how they want Aoyama to work alongside them to trick All for One. A change from the anime to the manga is actually that Aizawa appears on a back screen of the wall in comparison to the manga where he just appears on a tablet, and how he pretty much conveys the same sentiment that the kids have, but it's done in a more grandiose and bigger way by being put on a big screen TV, or should I say a big screen sort of kind of projector. And something else that I want to bring up in this scene is just that when it comes to what really declares the students wanting to help Aoyama in this moment is actually Ida declaring that things like this should be left in the past, which is very important because Ida, very much like Aoyama, acted as a villain going after Stain and wanting to kill him. So there is an impact for why Ida is the one saying this and why he believes that Aoyama, if not necessarily needs to be forgiven, needs to have his actions put in the past, because that's kind of what they did with Ida. And even Kirishima in this moment also brings up the idea that they were not bad-mouthing Deku for hiding something very important from them, so they wouldn't do the same with Aoyama. Also, something here that I want to bring up is that as we have everyone talking in this moment and reflecting on the idea that no one is blaming Aoyama for this moment, something that the anime adds is just showing characters such as Shoto as well as Throppy during the actual Deku retrieval of Dark Deku arc. And really just showing the connection between Deku in that moment and Aoyama in this moment. And I kind of like that small added flair that was not necessarily in the manga, but really adds to the moment in the anime. And all of this is very important, really showing that the kids have a connection with Aoyama, but unfortunately the adults themselves do not have that type of rapport. Even Tsukachi brings up the idea that they cannot really trust him, which leads to Shota Aizawa coming up with a plan that we'll kind of get hints to at the end of this episode, where he covers Aoyama's ears, reveals the plan to them as we see that the kids are separated from the actual adults. They discuss a little bit more as we cut over to Deku screaming out to Aoyama that he will more or less, representing in this moment, still be friends with him, as Aoyama is still very much viewing himself as a villain, even after the kids still show him a lot of support. And this kind of ties into something with Aoyama, how they're trying to sway him away from the darkness and the fear instilled in him by All for One, but that it's gonna take more than just the actions of the kids to do it. And we see that this motivates them to do what they need to do to stop All for One, as we have this cool panel in the manga being adapted in the anime with a very interesting set of colors, as well as really showing the facial expressions of the kids being angry at what All for One did to Aoyama, as well as showing the scenes of them just walking around while they're not showing their face, just to emphasize the anger that we would see in that actual panel in the manga, as well as seeing the scene in the anime. But going from there, we do have both Deku as well as Ida coming to a realization that they need new armor as they go to the support course, where we get reintroduced to Mei Hatsume, the individual that we saw first during the sports festival that actually was involved in allowing Deku to have his shoot style with his new boots made. And in this scene, it pretty much reenacts the first scene that we saw with her and Deku going to the support course, but this time a little bit more booby. But this is a very interesting moment because both in the manga and the anime, it sets up this idea that Mei Hatsume has no idea what's going on, that she's incapable of actually helping Deku with his mid-gauntlets because they are technology that she cannot replicate within a short amount of time, nor does she have Ida's specifications for his suit. And how both Deku and Ida believe that she has no idea what's going on and that she's oblivious to the entire situation, but they later on recognize that that is not necessarily the case, that while she does not know everything that is going on, she does understand that the heroes are fighting in a way to protect not just them, but everyone, and that what she's doing is her version of protecting the heroes as well as the people by supporting the heroes themselves, which really shows that there is an idea when it comes to heroism that it is not just a spectrum of people being saved by the heroes, but that it's a whole system of support and saving, and that you can be a hero by supporting others. As we see that she's working on potentially a new mechanism for the UA Fortress that is potentially going to help the heroes in the future. And while this is a very serious and heartwarming moment, there's still some emotion and still some comedy in it as well, as we see that she was able to actually build new equipment for Deku as well as Ida, just not to their specific specifications. Also, we do get to see some other individuals in the support course that really do not do much in this moment. So it's very cool that they are able to get that moment with Mei Hatsume as they reconvene with all of the students as they discuss what's going on with Aoyama and if Aoyama was going to join them. But either way, they believe that he will help them and that they will be eventually able to come together soon. As we have Mount Lady and this entire scene most likely being set up for what we're going to be getting in the fourth My Hero Academia movie, Your Next. As a change from the manga to the anime is that instead of them just saying that they're going out on a mission, what is actually being said is that they're going to be separating individuals based off the individuals of Bakugo, Deku, as well as Shoto, which is probably going to be represented in the actual Your Next movie of 3 separate groups being led by those individuals listed. So I think that this is a little bit more subtle way to kind of connect what's going to be happening in the anime to what's going to be happening in the movie, especially when this season is going to be running barely into the movie, which is coming out in August. But yeah, from there, we do have the short scene in the anime as seen in the manga, where we have Fat Gum, Nejire, Tamaki, as well as Ryuku, all coming in to stop this Godzilla lookalike villain as they are saving people, realizing that because more people are leaving the cities and moving to sanctuaries, they have less information on the villains, and how this is going to be the start of an all-out war between the heroes and the villains, especially in the case where the heroes aren't able to take the initial steps to start the battle and actually go in on their own terms. Now they have to go in on the terms of the villain, which actually leads into a sort of meeting between All Might, Hawks, the individuals who were Stars and Stripes pilots, as well as some police individuals, as well as Ragdoll, all joining together to come up with a plan to try and defeat All For One and Tomoe Shigaraki. And this one pretty much plays out as it does in the manga, with Ragdoll complaining about how she's unable to be with the Wild Wild Pussycats, and how this is pretty much going to be a very small operation, and how many operations around the entirety of Japan, specifically when it comes to police stations, have more or less like congregated in smaller pockets to make it easier to actually organize, and how they come up with a plan, thanks to All Might, to try and separate All For One and Tomoe Shigaraki due to the strength that Tomura is even stronger, if not stronger than All For One himself, and separating them by 10 kilometers. As well as the major idea is that Dabi can be a very much of detriment to the heroes as well, so making sure that they separate all of the major generals as a whole. And that's pretty much the entirety of that scene, which actually leads into the final scene of the episode and the final part of the story of how we all became heroes in the manga, where you have All Might talking to Sakachi about how he believes that Aoyama will be beneficial and help them in this war against All for One, as we have Aizawa himself talking to Aoyama, confirming that there's nothing wrong with him and that this is most likely the case, because if there was a type of like weapon inside of Aoyama very much similar to Lady Nagant, then All for One would not have needed to instill fear in Aoyama by killing someone in front of him. And how this all ties into the idea that Aoyama is not willing to work with them, not only because he views himself as a deplorable villain, but because he's still tangled and attached to the fear that All for One instilled inside of him. And how Aizawa pretty much gives a speech in a monologue pretty much declaring to Aoyama that things may not go to the way that they were, and that he may not be able to stay at UA, but that because he's still a student and that he is still his teacher, that he would do his best to make sure that he could continue fighting to rip that fear away from Aoyama, and that he could help benefit the hero side, and for the most part, him becoming a hero in his own way and helping his friends and everyone else, which is something that he knows that Aoyama wants to do, but is still clouded by the fear of All for One. And I will say that besides how I say it and how the manga did it, I would say that the anime really emphasizes these points more and better than what we saw in the manga. And how it also is able to show a better representation of Aoyama's darkness being faded away as he starts off more in a darkened area, but as the speech goes on, more light appears on Aoyama's side up until the moment where it's just pure bright blinding light, showing that Aoyama has finally begun to cross over more and stop viewing himself as this terrible villain. Even to the point where the final dialogue that Aizawa says that actually hints to the end credit scene post-ending is changed to the point to just emphasize that Aoyama is going to be helped by the heroes, the teachers, as well as the students, as the final scene of the episode is just Aoyama shedding a final tear as the title of the screen pops up over him, the story of how we all became the greatest heroes. And I think the anime really hit this emotional beat best that it was in the manga, specifically due to the tear as well as the final words of Aoyama, but also the final words of Aizawa that were not necessarily in the manga. And from there, we do have the end credit scene as well as the ending, where we get to see a few individuals that we saw from, I believe, class 1C, where they're calling out to Shinzo, who's apparently going to be playing a major role in the war moving forward. And something else that I'm going to talk about is going to be the previews to the next episode, which is going to be pretty much more information about what the next episode is going to be, which is going to heavily involve the villains such as Dabi, as well as Toga and All for One, but also potentially being the episode where the war will begin in earnest. So look forward to that. But yeah, that's all I really have to say. This is my review breakdown for this episode. I think that this was a very good episode and very much adds to what the manga was presenting in this moment. Not just with the dialogue, but a little bit of the animation really adds to the emotions that you should be feeling and how I felt when I was watching the episode itself in comparison to reading the manga. And while many people may have had complaints about the traitor subplot in the manga, I think the anime very much handled it better, if not just as well, and probably could change the minds of how the traitor plotline was handled and how this may be a better representation. And how this may be a better representation for not just manga readers, but also anime readers to really get attached to Aoyama. But yeah, that's all I really have to say for this video right now. Let me ask you this. What did you think of the episode? Did you like it? Did you dislike it? And what was your favorite part of the episode? Leave your thoughts down below. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. Do all that cool jazz. And hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!